Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching the Arkansas Gun Guy. Today I want to revisit what I am boldly calling the most important firearm in H&K's storied history, and that is the USP series. Very bold statement, I know. I don't make many bold statements, and they've made so many fantastic guns. The MP5 is my favorite gun to shoot still. The rifles are amazing. But based off what happened before and after the USP, I feel like this is the most important gun in the history of H&K and what's helped make them the fantastic company they are today. So this is my favorite H&K. I mentioned the SP5. I also love the P30, but it is one that I think is marked a very pivotal turning point in H&K's history. So I'd love to share with you what I know about the USP. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the USP as well. What do you love about it? What do you hate about it? But the reason I think this firearm is so important for H&K is because before this gun was introduced, H&K wasn't really in a fantastic spot. They had a rifle, they had the P9S, which was discontinued, and in the 80s and early 90s, the only handgun they were making was the awesome H&K P7. Now this is the original PSP version. There was a P8 and a P13 that held more rounds, but it was a striker fired gun with a squeeze cocker that is also one of my favorite firearms. But this is the only only handgun they offered. It was heavy, it was very expensive to produce and very expensive to buy, and didn't sell that well, which is what makes it so desirable today. Fantastic firearm, maybe one of my favorites, closer to the P30 and USP. I love to shoot this firearm, but it wasn't a popular seller. It wasn't very profitable for H&K. They had also just invested a lot of their money and capital into development of the G11 rifle, caseless ammo rifle. They were going to try to get contracts for the German military. But in 1989, when the German wall fell down, or was brought down by David Hasselhoff and Ronald Reagan, the German government decided it was less expensive to unify Germany than to place the contract for the H&K guns. So H&K was kind of left out in the cold and kind of in a bad spot. So they started researching what was out there, what was happening in the market. And instead of having a gas delayed blowback firearm, they went for a simple Browning style action firearm with a polymer frame that was all the rage, something they saw they could do well, produce fairly inexpensively compared to what they had been producing, and make it super reliable and have something that was just a new direction for them. So they started producing the USP series for police contracts all over the world. And what made it so special was, well, a couple things. First, at the same time they were producing this, or starting to produce this, the 40 Smith & Wesson cartridge was the flavor of the month in ammo. And most people had taken their existing 9mm firearms and tried to retrofit it and make it hold the power and pressure of the 40 Smith & Wesson. And that wound up leading to cracked frames and all kinds of other issues. H&K designed the USP from the ground up around the 40 Smith & Wesson cartridge. So it was designed for a more powerful cartridge from the beginning. That 40 Smith & Wesson is so important. While today it's not a very popular round, if you look at the Vickers Guide for all of H&K's handguns, Volume 1, the gun they decided to feature is USP and 40 Smith & Wesson. It was a big darn deal that they started with that caliber and then built everything around that. They started with a full-size USP and 40 Smith & Wesson. This is a 45. And then they later developed 9mm, I think they even did 357 SIG, and later 45 USP made the firearm slightly larger for the 45. But suddenly now they had a firearm, instead of being a gas delay blowback system for one cartridge, they now had a firearm that could be chambered in 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 357 SIG, 45, so multiple calibers available. And they started in full size, but then the other thing that they did was make this gun very capable of being modularized. So this version is I think a V1, which has the safety and decocker on the left-hand side for right-handers. You can get the same setup on this side for left-handers. I already have the notch there for you. And an armorer can flip it for you with a different part over here, or you can buy it that way. And then, so you can customize it. If you have a police department that wants to order some for left-handers, some for right-handers, you can also buy them with safeties only, or safeties and decockers. So this gun is chambered with a decocker. You drop the hammer just like that. So very modular. There's so many versions of this. There is safety decocker left-hand side, safety decocker right-hand side, safety only left, safety only right. There is a decocker only version. There's a double action only version. So these can be made, again, relatively inexpensive with the polymer technology, made to order for any police force that's out there. So suddenly H&K had lots of flexibility in what they're able to do and offer for contracts. Eventually, they also made these in smaller versions. This is the 40 Smith & Wesson Compact versus the 45 ACP full size. Again, the Compact was just that, a more small version of the full size gun. Came with all the same options, safety and decocker. The carry versions often came with bobbed hammers. Now, there's also another trigger I didn't mention, and that is the LEM trigger, the law enforcement modification. It's a very unique double action only sort of trigger that is also very popular amongst people who know about it. So I think, in my humble opinion, all those things marked a remarkable turning point for H&K. Oh, forgot to mention also the first company to have an accessory rail on here for lights. And while today everything has evolved to a 1913 pick rail, H&K has kept the same molds, keep producing the same firearm, because this is pretty much the exact same gun they produced over 30 years ago. And so there's not many companies today that can say they have the exact same firearm they produced 30 years ago still in the lineup. Has a very passionate following. This thing has been bomb-proof tested. It's legendary for all the testing it's gone through and all the torture tests it's passed. It's got multiple safeties built in, so you're not going to have an accidental discharge with these firearms. They've got internal drop safeties. They've got, when you get a battery, you can't fire the firearm. Has a trigger that isn't a super light featherweight trigger. It's a duty type trigger with a big, heavy double action pull. And a reset that there's nothing to write home about. But it's a duty weapon. It's a weapon meant to be carried with gloves, has a giant trigger guard to get your hand in there. It's a trigger that has a safety. You're not going to pull the trigger on accident. So, again, just a gun that is very flexible, and then led to the evolution of another smaller carry pistol called the P2000, which is still being produced today. There was a contract that wanted to have more of an ambi slide stop slide catch, I think, on there. And so P2000 followed this, and eventually this led to the P30, which we have today, which is super customizable with all the same different modifications for LEM triggers, different calibers, different battery of arms, but they're also 100% ambi now, and it has different textured grip panels and back straps you can use to make it to customize it to fit your hand. So all those things, I think, all the great things about H&K we have now started when they made the USP series, and that marked a remarkable, I think, a turning point in H&K's trajectory and made them the kind of powerhouse they are today. My humble thoughts on what I think is a very important gun in H&K's lineup. I'd love to hear what you guys think as well. As always, thank you for watching. I really appreciate you tuning in. If you haven't yet, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks again.